Welcome back to the Buddhist Bookshelf YouTube channel. Today, we will resume our reading of the Sorrowless Flower, authored by Ngoc Tran, known as Dharma named Thien Phuc, and this is episode number 33. 446. 10 Bodies of the Buddha. According to the Flower Ornament Scripture, Chapter 37, Manifestation of Buddha, Enlightening Beings see 10 characteristics of the body of Buddha in infinite places. The first characteristic of the body of Buddha. Great enlightening beings should see the body of Buddha in infinite places. They should not see Buddha in just one thing, one phenomenon, one body, one land, one being. They should see Buddha everywhere. Just as space is omnipresent, in all places, material or immaterial, yet without either arriving or not arriving there, because space is incorporeal. In the same manner, Buddha is omnipresent, in all places, in all beings, in all things, in all lands, yet neither arriving nor not arriving there, because Buddha's body is incorporeal, manifesting a body for the sake of sentient beings. The second characteristic of the body of Buddha. Just as space is wide open, is not a form yet can reveal all forms, yet space is without discrimination or false description, so also is the body of Buddha like this, causing all beings mundane and transmundane good works to be accomplished by illuminating all with the light of knowledge, yet without discrimination or false descriptions. Having originally terminated all attachments and false descriptions. The third characteristic of the body of Buddha. When the sun comes out, infinite living beings all receive its benefits. It disperses the darkness and gives light, dries up moisture, causes plants and trees to grow, matures crops, permeates the sky, causes lotuses to bloom, allows travelers to see the road, allows people to do their work, because the orb of the sun radiates infinite beams of light everywhere. The sun of knowledge of Buddha is also like this, benefiting sentient beings everywhere by infinite works, destroying evil and producing good, breaking down ignorance and creating knowledge, benevolently saving, compassionately liberating, causing growth of faculties, powers, and elements of enlightenment, causing beings to develop profound faith, enabling them to see inevitable cause and effect, fostering in them the celestial eye to see where beings die and are born, causing their minds to be unimpeded and not destroy roots of goodness, causing them to cultivate illumination by knowledge and open the flower of awakening, causing them to determine to fulfill their fundamental task. Why? Because Buddha's immense sun body of knowledge and wisdom radiates infinite light, illuminating everywhere. The fourth characteristic of the body of Buddha. When the sun rises, first it lights up the highest mountains such as the Sumeru, then the lower mountains, then the high plateaus, and finally the whole land. But the sun does not think, first I will illuminate here, afterward I will illuminate there. It is just because of difference in height of the mountains and land that there is a succession in illumination. The Buddha, similarly, having developed the boundless orb of knowledge of the realm of reality, always radiating the light of unimpeded knowledge, first of all illumines the high mountains, which are the great enlightening beings, then illumines those who are awakened by understanding of conditioning, then illumines those who listen to the message, then illumines sentient beings whose foundation of goodness are sure and stable, revealing vast knowledge according to beings' mental capacities, finally illumining all sentient beings, even reaching those who are fixated on error, to be a beneficial cause for the future, that they may develop to maturity. But the light of the sun of great knowledge of Buddha does not think, I will first illumine the great deeds of enlightening beings, and at the very last shine on sentient beings who are fixated on error. It just radiates the light, shining equally on all, without obstruction or impediment, without discrimination. Just as the sun moon appear in their time and impersonally shine on the mountains and valleys, so also does the knowledge of Buddha shine on all without discrimination. While the light of knowledge has various differences, according to the differences in faculties and inclinations of sentient beings. The fifth characteristic of the body of Buddha. When the sun comes out, those born blind cannot see it, because they have no faculty of vision, yet even though they do not see it, they are benefited by the light of the sun. Why? By this is possible to know the times of day and night, and to have access to food and clothing to comfort the body and free from distress. The sun of knowledge of Buddha is also like this: the blind without faith or understanding, immoral and heedless, sustaining themselves by wrong means of livelihood, do not see the orb of the sun of knowledge of the Buddha because they have no eye of faith, but even though they do not see it, they are still benefited by the sun of knowledge. Why? Because by the power of Buddha it makes the causes of future suffering of those beings, physical pains and psychological afflictions, all vanish. The Buddha has various kinds of light to use as skillful means to save sentient beings. There is a light called accumulating all virtues, a light called total universal illumination, a light called pure free illumination, a light called producing great wondrous sound, a light called understanding all languages and gladdening others, a light called the realm of freedom, showing the eternal cancellation of all doubts, a light called independent universal illumination of non-dwelling knowledge, a light called free knowledge forever terminating all false descriptions, a light called marvelous sayings according to need, and a light called producing free utterances adorning lands and maturing sentient beings. Each pore of the Buddha emits 1,000 kinds of light. Like these, 500 lights beam downward, 500 lights beam upward, illuminating the congregations of enlightening beings at the various places of the Buddhas in the various lands. When the enlightening beings see these lights, all at once they realize the realm of Buddhahood, with 10 heads, 10 eyes, 10 ears, 10 noses, 10 tongues, 10 bodies, 10 hands, 10 feet, 10 stages, and 10 knowledges, all thoroughly pure. The states and stages previously accomplished by those enlightening beings become more pure upon seeing these lights, their roots of goodness mature, and they proceed toward emissions. Those in the 2 lesser vehicles have all their defilements removed. Some other beings, who are blind, their bodies blissful, also become purified in mind, gentle and docile, able to cultivate mindfulness and knowledge. The sentient beings in the realms of hells, hungry ghosts and animals, all become blissful and are freed from pains, and when their lives end are reborn in heaven or the human world. Those sentient beings are not aware, do not know by what cause, by what spiritual power, they came to be born there. Those blind ones think, we are Brahma gods, we are emanations of Brahma. Then Buddha, in the concentration of universal freedom, says to them, you are not Brahma gods, not emanations of Brahma, nor were you created by the king god Indra or the world guardian gods. All this is spiritual power of Buddha. Having heard this, those sentient beings, by the spiritual power of Buddha, all know their past life and become very happy. Because their hearts are joyful, they naturally produce clouds of Udambara flowers, clouds of fragrances, music, cloth, parasols, banners, pennants, aromatic powders, jewels, towers adorned with lion banners and crescents, clouds of song of praise, clouds of all kinds of adornments, and respectfully offer them to the Buddha. Why? Because these sentient beings have gained clear eyes, and therefore the Buddha gives them the prophecy of unexcelled complete perfect enlightenment. In this way the Buddha's sun knowledge benefits sentient beings born blind, fostering the full development of basic goodness. The 6th characteristic of the body of Buddha. It is like the moon, with 4 special extraordinary qualities. The characteristics of the body of Buddha similarly has 4 special extraordinary qualities. The moon outshines all the stars, the body of Buddha similarly outshines all hearers and individual illuminates, whether they are in the stage of learning or beyond learning. As time passes, the moon shows waning or waxing, but its original nature has no waning nor waxing. The body of the Buddha manifests different lifespans according to the needs of the situation, yet the Buddha body is neither increasing nor decreasing. The moon reflection appears in all clear waters. In the same manner, the reflection of the Buddha body appears in all vessels of enlightenment, sentient beings with pure minds, in all worlds. All who see the moon see it right before them, yet the moon has no discrimination and no arbitrary conception. In the same manner, all sentient beings who behold the Buddha body think the Buddha is in their presence alone. According to their inclinations, Buddha teaches them, liberating them according to their states, causing them to perceive the Buddha body according to their needs and potentials for edification, Yet the Buddha body has no discrimination, no arbitrary conceptions, all benefits it renders reach the ultimate end. The seventh characteristic of the body of Buddha. Just as the supreme Brahma God of a billion-world universe simply manifests its body in the billion worlds, and all beings see Brahma before them, yet Brahma does not divide its body and does not have multiple bodies. In the same way, the Buddhas have no discrimination, no place representations, and do not divide their bodies or have multiple bodies, yet they manifest their bodies in accord with the inclinations of all sentient beings, without thinking that they manifest so many bodies. The eighth characteristic of the body of Buddha. A master physician is well versed in all medications and the science of hypnosis, fully uses all the medicines in the land, and, also because of the power of the physician's past roots of goodness, and because of using hypnotic spells as an expedient, all those who see the physician recover from illness. That master physician, sensing impending death, thinks, after I die, sentient beings will have no one to rely on, I should manifest an expedient for them. Then the master physician compounds drugs, which he smears on his body, and support his body by spell power, so that it will not decay or shrivel after death, so its bearing, seeing, and hearing will be no different from before, and all cures will be effected. The Buddha, the truly enlightened one, the unexcelled master physician, is also like this, having developed and perfected the medicines of the teaching over countless eons, having cultivated and learned all skills and application of means, and fully consummated the power of illuminating spells, is able to quell all sentient beings' afflictions. Buddha's life spans measureless eons, the body pure, without any cognition, without activity, never ceasing the works of Buddhas, the afflictions of all sentient beings who see Buddha dissolve away. The ninth characteristic of the body of Buddha. In the ocean there is a great jewel called radiant repository, in which are assembled all lights. If any sentient beings touch its light, they become assimilated to its color, if any see it, their eyes are purified. Whenever the light shines it rains jewels called felicity that soothe and comfort beings. The body of Buddha is also like this, being a treasury of knowledge in which are collected all virtues. If any sentient beings come in contact with the light of precious knowledge of the body of Buddha, they become the same as Buddha in appearance, if any see it their eye of reality is purified. Wherever that light shines, it frees sentient beings from the miseries of poverty, and ultimately imbues them with the bliss of enlightenment, but can perform great Buddha works for all sentient beings. The 10th characteristic of the body of Buddha. In the ocean is a great wish-fulfilling jewel called treasury of adornments of all worlds, fully endowed with 1,000,000 qualities, eliminating calamities and fulfilling wishes of beings wherever it is. However, this jewel cannot be seen by beings of little merit. The supreme wish-fulfilling jewel of the body of Buddha is also like this, called able to gladden all beings. If any sentient being see the body of Buddha, hear the name, and praise the virtues, they will all be enabled to escape forever the pains and ills of birth and death. Even if all beings in all worlds focus their minds all at once on the desire to see Buddha, they will all be enabled to see, and their wish will be fulfilled. The Buddha body cannot be seen by sentient beings of little merit, unless they can be tamed by the spiritual power of Buddha. If sentient beings, because of seeing the body of Buddha, plant roots of goodness and develop them, they are enabled to see the body of Buddha for their development. Great enlightening beings should see it thus, because their minds are measureless, pervading the 10 directions, because their actions are as unhindered as space, because they penetrate everywhere in the realm of reality, because they abide in the absolute truth, because they have no birth or death, because they remain equal throughout past, present, and future. Because they are forever rid of all false discriminations, because they continue their eternal vows, because they purify all worlds, because they adorn each Buddha body. 447. 10 perfect bodies of the Buddha. According to Buddhist traditions, the Buddha has 10 perfect bodies. The first perfect body of the Buddha is the Bodhi body, which is in possession of complete enlightenment. The second perfect body of the Buddha is the vow body, i.e. the vow to be born in and from the two-seated heaven. The third perfect body of the Buddha is the Nirmanakaya. Buddha incarnate as a man in the royal palace. Fourth, the Buddha who still occupies his relics or what he has left behind on earth and thus upholds the dharmas. The fifth perfect body of the Buddha is the Sambhogakaya, endowed with an idealized body with all Buddha marks and merits. Sixth, power body, embracing all with his heart of mercy. Seventh, at-will body, appearing according to wish and deed. Eighth, samadhi body, or body of blessed virtue. Ninth, wisdom body, whose nature embraces all wisdom. The 10th perfect body of the Buddha is the Dharmakaya, the absolute Buddha or essence of all life. 448. Dharma. Generally speaking, Dharma means things, events, phenomena. Dharma also means duty, law or doctrine. The cosmic law which is underlying our world, but according to Buddhism, this is the law of karmically determined rebirth. The Dharma that is the law of beginningless and endless becoming, to which all phenomena are subject according to causes and conditions. When Dharma means phenomenon, it indicates all phenomena, things and manifestation of reality. All phenomena are subject to the law of causation, and this fundamental truth comprises the core of the Buddha's teaching. Dharma is a very troublesome word to handle properly, and yet at the same time it is one of the most important and essential technical terms in Buddhism. Dharma has many meanings. A term derived from the Sanskrit root dhr, which means to hold or to bear. There seems always to be something of the idea of enduring also going along with it. Originally, it means the cosmic law which underlying our world, above all, the law of karmically determined rebirth. The teaching of the Buddha, who recognized and regulated this law. In fact, Dharma, universal truth, existed before the birth of the historical Buddha, who is no more than a manifestation of it. Today, Dharma is most commonly used to refer to Buddhist doctrine and practice. Dharma is also one of the three jewels on which Buddhists rely for the attainment of liberation. The other jewels are the Buddha and the Sangha. Etymologically, it comes from the Sanskrit root dry, means to hold, to bear, or to exist. There seems always to be something of the idea of enduring also going along with it. The most common and most important meaning of Dharma in Buddhism is truth, law, or religion. Secondly, it is used in the sense of existence being object or thing. Thirdly, it is synonymous with virtue, righteousness or norm, not only in the ethical sense, but in the intellectual one also. Fourthly, it is occasionally used in a most comprehensive way, including all the senses mentioned above. In this case, we'd better leave the original untranslated, rather than to seek for an equivalent in a foreign language. According to Buddhism, Dharma means Buddhist doctrine or teachings. The teaching of the Buddhas which carry or hold the truth. The way of understanding and love taught by the Buddha doctrine. The Buddha taught the Dharma to help us escape the sufferings and afflictions caused by daily life, and to prevent us from degrading human dignity and descending into evil paths such as hells, hungry ghosts, and animals, etc. The Dharma is like a raft that gives us something to hang on to as we eliminate our attachments, which cause us to suffer and be stuck on this shore of birth and death. The Buddha's Dharma refers to the methods of inward illumination. It takes us across the sea of our afflictions to the other shore, nirvana. Once we get there, even the Buddha's Dharma should be relinquished. The Dharma is not an extraordinary law created by or given by anyone. According to the Buddha, our body itself is Dharma, our mind itself is Dharma, the whole universe is Dharma. By understanding the nature of our physical body, the nature of our mind, and worldly conditions, we realize the Dharma. The Dharma that is the law of beginningless and endless becoming, to which all phenomena are subject according to causes and conditions. The Dharma, which comprises the spoken words and sermons of Sakyamuni Buddha, wherein he elucidated the significance of the unified three treasures and the way to its realization. The Dharma, the teaching imparted by the Buddha. All written sermons and discourses of Buddhas, that is, fully enlightened beings, as found in the sutras and other Buddhist texts still extant. To Buddhist theories, nothing is real and permanent, the five aggregates make up beings, pillars and rafters make a house, etc. All is temporal and merely phenomenal, fallacious, and unreal. Names are only provisionary symbol or sign. All dharmas are empirical combinations without permanent reality. All things are false and fictitious and unreal names, i.e., nothing has a name of itself, for all names are mere human appellations. In the Lankavatara Sutra, the Buddha reminded Mahamati, as they are attached to names, images, and signs, the ignorant allow their minds to wander away. Things which exist only in name, i.e., all things are combinations of other things and are empirically named. All things or phenomena are combinations of elements without permanent reality, phenomena, empirical combinations without permanent reality. The phenomena which no more exists than turtle's hair or rabbit's horns. According to the Prajnaparamita Heart Sutra, the basic characteristic of all dharmas is not arising, not ceasing, not defiled, not immaculate, not increasing, not decreasing. The Buddha says, "He who sees the Dharma sees me." Dharma means the teaching of the Buddha. Dharma also means the doctrine of understanding and loving. Dharma means the doctrines of Buddhism, norms of behavior and ethical rules including Pitaka, Vinaya and Sila. Dharma also means reflection of a thing in the human mind, mental content, object of thought or idea. Dharma means factors of existence which the Hinayana considers as bases of the empirical personality. According to Prof. Junjiro Takakusu in the Essentials of Buddhist Philosophy, the word Dharma has 5 meanings. First, Dharma would mean that which is held to or the ideal if we limit its meaning to mental affairs only. This ideal will be different in scope as conceived by different individuals. In the case of the Buddha, it will be perfect enlightenment or perfect wisdom, bodhi. Secondly, the ideal as expressed in words will be his sermon, dialogue, teaching, doctrine. Thirdly, the ideal is set forth for his pupils as the rule, discipline, precept, morality. Fourthly, the ideal to be realized will be the principle, theory, truth, reason, nature, law, condition. Fifthly, the ideal as realized in a general sense will be reality, fact, thing, element, created and not created, mind and matter, idea and phenomenon, reflection of a thing in the human mind, mental content, object of thought or idea, and factors of existence which the Hinayana considers as bases of the empirical personality. According to the Madhyamakas, Dharma is a Pratyan word in Buddhism. In the broadest sense, it means an impersonal spiritual energy behind and in everything. There are 4 important senses in which this word has been used in Buddhist philosophy and religion. First, Dharma in the sense of one ultimate reality. It is both transcendent and immanent to the world, and also the governing law within it. Second, Dharma in the sense of scripture, doctrine, religion, as the Buddhist Dharma. Third, Dharma in the sense of righteousness, virtue, and piety. Fourth, Dharma in the sense of elements of existence. In this sense, it is generally used in plural. 449. Dharmas of sameness. According to the Lankavatara Sutra, the Buddha taught, "We talk of this in the assembly because of the secret teaching of fourfold sameness, that I was in ancient days the Buddha Krakyakanda, Kanakamuni, or Kasyapa. 4 sorts of sameness for those who discipline themselves in religious life. First, by sameness in letters is meant that the title Buddha is equally given to all Tathagatas, no distinction being made among them, as far as these letter Buddha go. Second, by sameness in words is meant that all the Tathagatas speak in 64 different notes or sounds, with the language of Brahma is pronounced, and that their language sounding like the notes of Kalavinka bird is common to all the Tathagatas. Third, by sameness in body is meant that all the Tathagatas show no distinction as far as their dharmakaya, their corporal features, rupalakshana, and their secondary marks of excellence are concerned. They differ, however, when they are seen by a variety of beings whom they have the special design to control and discipline. Fourth, by sameness in the truth is meant that all Tathagatas attain to the same realization by means of the 37 divisions of enlightenment. According to the Vimalakirti Sutra, Chapter 3, the disciples, when the Buddha asked Subhuti to go to visit Vimalakirti on his behalf, Subhuti said to the Buddha as follows, "World-honored one, I am not qualified to call on him and inquire after his health. The reason is that once when I went to his house begging for food, he took my bowl and filled it with rice, saying, Subhuti, if your mind set on eating is in the same state as when confronting all other things, and if this uniformity as regards all things equally applies to the act of eating, you can then beg for food and eat it. Subhuti, if without cutting off carnality, anger and stupidity, you can keep from these 3 evils. If you do not wait for the death of your body to achieve the oneness of all things, if you do not wipe out stupidity and love in your quest of enlightenment and liberation, if you can look into the underlying nature of the 5 deadly sins to win liberation, with at the same time no idea of either bondage or freedom, if you give rise to neither the 4 noble truths nor their opposites, if you do not hold both the concept of winning and not winning the holy fruit, if you do not regard yourself as a worldly or unworldly man, as a saint or not as a saint, if you perfect all dharmas while keeping away from the concept of dharmas, then can you receive and eat the food. Subhuti, if you neither see the Buddha nor hear the Dharma, if the 6 heterodox teachers, Purana Kasyapa, Maskari Gasalaputra, Yanjaya Varadaputra, Ajita Kasakambala, Kakuta Katyayana and Nirgrantha Jnetaputra, are regarded impartially as your own teachers, and if, when they induce leavers of home into heterodoxy, you also fall with the latter, then you can take away the food and eat it. If you are unprejudiced about falling into heresy and regard yourself as not reaching the other shore of enlightenment, if you are unprejudiced about the 8 sad conditions and regard yourself as not free from them, if you are unprejudiced about defilements and relinquish the concept of pure living, if when you realize samadhi in which there is absence of debate or disputation, all living beings also achieve it, if your donors of food are not regarded, with partiality, as cultivating the field of blessedness, if those making offerings to you are partially looked on as also falling into the 3 evil realms of existence, if you impartially regard demons as your companions without differentiating between them, as well as between other forms of defilement, if you are discontented with all living beings, defame the Buddha, break the law, Dharma, do not attain the holy rank, and fail to win liberation, then you can take away the food and eat it. World-honored one, I was dumbfounded when I heard his words which were beyond my reach, and to which I found no answer. Then I left the bowl of rice and intended to leave his house, but Vimalakirti said, Hey, Subhuti, take the bowl of rice without fear. Are you frightened when the Tathagata makes an illusory man ask you questions? I replied, No. He then continued, All things are illusory, and you should not fear anything. Why? Because words and speech are illusory. So all wise men do not cling to words and speech, and this is why they fear nothing. Why? Because words and speech have no independent nature of their own, and when they are no more, you are liberated. This liberation will free you from all bondage. 450. Offering of Dharma. Serving the Dharma by believing it, explaining it, obeying it, keeping it, protecting it, cultivating the spiritual nature and assisting the Buddhism. According to the Vimalakirti Sutra, Chapter 13, the offering of Dharma, under the influence of the Buddha's transcendental power, a deva in the sky said to the Bodhisattvas, Virtuous man, the offering of Dharma surpasses all other forms of offering. Lunar Canopy asked, What is this offering of Dharma? The deva replied, Go to the Tathagata beside you who will explain it fully. Thereupon, Lunar Canopy came to the Tathagata Bisajya, bowed his head at his feet and stood at his side, asking, World-honored one, I have heard that the offering of Dharma surpasses all other forms of offering. What is the offering of Dharma? The Tathagata replied, Virtuous one, the offering of Dharma is preached by all Buddhas in profound sutras, but it is hard for worldly men to believe and accept it, as its meaning is subtle and not easily detected, for it is spotless in its purity and cleanness. It is beyond the reach of thinking and discriminating. It contains the treasury of the Bodhisattva's Dharma store, and is sealed by the Dharani symbol. It never backslides, for it achieves the 6 perfections, paramitas, discerns the difference between various meanings, is in line with the Bodhi Dharma, is at the top of all sutras, helps people to enter upon great kindness and great compassion, to keep from demons and perverse views, and to conform with the law of causality and the teaching on the unreality of an ego, a man, a living being and life, and on voidness, formlessness, non-creating and non-uprising. It enables living beings to sit in a Buddhimandala to turn the wheel of the law. It is praised and honored by heavenly dragons, Gandharvas, etc. It can help living beings to reach the Buddha's Dharma store and gather all knowledge, sarvajna realized by saints and sages, preach the path followed by all bodhisattvas, rely on the reality underlying all things, proclaim the doctrine of impermanence, suffering, voidness and absence of ego and nirvana. It can save all living beings who have broken the precepts and keep in all demons, heretics and greedy people. It is praised by the Buddhas, saints and sages, for it wipes out suffering from birth and death, proclaims the joy in nirvana as preached by past, future, and present Buddhas in the 10 directions. If a listener after hearing about this sutra believes, understands, receives, upholds, reads and recites it, and uses appropriate methods, abhaya, to preach it clearly to others, this upholding of the Dharma is called the offering of Dharma. Further, the practice of all dharmas is preached, to keep in line with the doctrine of the 12 links in the chain of existence, to wipe out all heterodox views, to achieve the patient endurance of the uncreate, anitpati dharmic santi, as beyond creation, to settle once for all the unreality of the ego and the non-existence of living beings, and to forsake all dualities of ego and its objects, without deviation from and contradiction to the law of causality and retribution for good and evil, by trusting to the meaning rather than the letter, to wisdom rather than consciousness, to sutras revealing the whole truth rather than those of partial revelation, and to the Dharma instead of the man, i.e. the preacher, to conform with the 12 links in the chain of existence, nidanas, that have neither whence to come nor whither to go, beginning from ignorance, avidya, which is fundamentally non-existent, and conception, samskara, which is also basically unreal, down to birth, jati, which is fundamentally non-existent, and old age and death, harmarana, which are equally unreal. Thus contemplated, the 12 links in the chain of existence are inexhaustible, thereby putting an end to the wrong view of annihilation. This is the unsurpassed offering of Dharma. 451. Dharma Protector. According to Buddhism, Dharma Protector is one who protects and maintains the Buddha truth and safeguards Buddhist temples. In temples, there are 4 Dharma protectors guarding the entrance doors to the Buddha hall, 2 scholars and 2 warriors. The scholar Dharma protector with the scroll of paper in his hands represents the attainment of wisdom through the contemplation of the mind, the warrior Dharma protector, carrying the sword to show that he is ready to protect the temple and to cut off ignorance in order to attain wisdom. The term Dharma protector has 2 meanings. First, gods, spirits, and ghosts who protect the Dharma and those who cultivate it. Secondly, human lay supporters of the Buddhist monastic establishment. 452. Dharma door. The doctrine or wisdom of Buddha regarded as the door, method, to enlightenment. The teaching of the Buddha. The meaning is that the Dharma is something like a gate, because through it sentient beings attain the enlightenment. As the living have 84,000 delusions, so the Buddha provides 84,000 methods of dealing with them. Knowing that the spiritual level of sentient beings is totally different from one another, the Buddha had allowed his disciples to choose any suitable Dharma they like to practice. A person can practice one or many Dharmas, depending on his physical conditions, his free time, since all the Dharmas are closely related. Practicing Buddhist Dharma requires continuity, regularity, faith, purpose, and determination. Laziness and hurriedness are signs of failure. There is only one path leading to enlightenment, but, since people differ greatly in terms of health, material conditions, intelligence, character and faith, the Buddha taught more than one path leading to different stages of attainment, such as stage of hearers, that of Pratika Buddhas, that of bodhisattvas, that of laymen, and that of monks and nuns. All of these ways are ways to the Buddhahood. nobody can reach final attainment without following a path, and no enlightenment can be reached without studying, understanding and practicing. According to the Lotus Sutra, the law of origin is the teaching expressing the relationship between the Buddha and man, that is, the salvation of man through the original Buddha. This salvation depends on the benevolence of the Buddha, and the benevolence is the essence of the law of origin. The law of origin declares that Sakyamuni Buddha has continually taught people throughout the universe since the infinite past. In other words, the Buddha is the truth of the universe, that is, the fundamental principle or the fundamental power causing all phenomena of the universe, including the sun, other stars, human beings, animals, plants, and so on, to live and move. Therefore, according to the law of origin, the Buddha has existed everywhere in the universe since its beginning. Methods of saving sentient beings are instruction in the Buddhist principles. According to the Thien Phuc sect, the Buddha utilized 4 methods to save sentient beings. First, preaching in accordance with the Tripitaka basket. Second, interrelated preaching. Third, differentiated preaching. Fourth, a complete, all-embracing preaching. The Dharma door of existence is one of the 2 doors for Pure Land practitioners. This is a Dharma door that still relies on form characteristics to practice, because we sentient beings are still trapped in existence, as well as in the 6 faculties of eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, and the 6 elements of form, sound, fragrance, flavor, touch and dharma. Thus at every moment of our existence, our faculties are interacting with the various elements, so it is impossible for us to have emptiness while facing the stimuli in our surroundings. The Pure Land method belongs to the Dharma door of existence. When Pure Land practitioners first develop the Bodhi mind, they enter the way through forms and marks, and seek to view the celestial scenes of the Western Pure Land. There is also the Dharma door of emptiness, one of the 2 doors for Pure Land practitioners. This Dharma door abandons the attachments to form in order to cultivate. It is the ability to tame and master over the 6 faculties of eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, and is no longer enslaved and ordered around by the 6 elements of form, sound, fragrance, flavor, touch and dharma. Only arhats and bodhisattvas who have attained a state of no learning. In the Zen school, the practitioner enters the way throughout the Dharma door of emptiness. Right from the beginning of his cultivation he wipes out all markers, even the marks of the Buddhas or the Dharma are destroyed. There is also the Dharma door of Buddha recitation. Although Buddha recitation is simple, it is very deep and encompassing. However, it is most important to be utterly sincere and earnest, for only then will your thoughts merge with those of Amitabha Buddhas, and can you reap true benefits in this very life. If you are lazy and careless or lack of zealous energy, you may still sow the seeds of future liberation, but evil karma as a result of disrespect the Buddha teachings is inconceivable. However, thanks to the residual merits of reciting the name of Amitabha, you escape the 3 evil paths and are reborn in the human or celestial realms, but you will find it is very difficult to join the ocean-wide lotus assembly. According to Most Venerable Thien Phuc in the Pure Land Buddhism, the Dharma methods are not, in themselves, high or low. It is only because the different natures and capacities of individuals that they have been categorized as such. Sentient beings are at different levels of spiritual development, and therefore, various methods are required. There are numerous methods, however, we can summarize in the 3 basic ones. Tibetan traditions also have the door of Rizmd. Rizmd is a Tibetan term for non-sectarian. This is an important 19th century religious movement in Tibetan Buddhism, initiated by Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, 1820–1892, and Jamgon Kongtrul Lodro Te, 1811–1899. It arose as a reaction to the stultifying, Lam Gyomhyo Loic, sectarianism of Tibetan Buddhism, which had led to Buddhist paralysis in practices and dogmatic, Thuok Vgyal Liu, adherence to tradition, as well as violence. Adherents of the movement attempted to find common ground between the various traditions of Tibetan Buddhism and rejected the prevalent Thien Phuc tendency to focus on memorization and repetition of scholastic treatises and textbooks that extrapolated Ngoc Tran from Indian sources. Wisdom teachers, by contrast, required their students to study the original Indian sources of Tibetan Buddhism. The movement also had an important popular component, as wisdom teachers often adopted the themes and images of popular literature like the Jisr epic, Huang Circa. In addition, many wisdom teachers developed popular religious rituals, such as conferring, ban cho, transference of consciousness initiations on groups of laypeople. Wisdom has played a pivotally important role in the modern development of the Sakyapa, Kabrajayadpa, and Nyingmapa order. According to the Lotus Sutra, there are 2 doors of original and previous teachings. The first 14 chapters which related to the Buddha's early life and previous teaching. The following 14 chapters which related to the final revelation of the Buddha as eternal and bodhisattva doctrines. There is also the law of appearance. The law of appearance means the teaching of the Buddha appearing in history. The law of appearance includes the teachings of the organization of the universe, human life, and human relationships, on the basis of the experience and enlightenment of Sakyamuni Buddha, who attained the ideal state of a human being. Sakyamuni Buddha also teaches us that wisdom is the most important attribute for maintaining correct human relationships. The essence of the law of appearance is the wisdom of the Buddha. 2 doors of compassion and wisdom. First, Buddha pity, or bodhisattva pity, the way of pity directed to others. Second, wisdom gate or Buddha wisdom, or the way of enlightenment. 453. I and mine. The self and its possession. The main goal of Buddhism is the extinction of separate individuality, which is brought about when we cease to identify anything with ourselves. From long habit it has become quite natural to us to think of our own experience in the term of I and mine. Even when we are convinced that strictly speaking such words are too nebulous to be tenable, and that their unthinking use leads to unhappiness in our daily lives, even then do we go on using them. The reasons for this are manifold. One of them is that we see no alternative way of explaining our experiences to ourselves, except by way of statements which include such words as I and mine. In the Dharmapada Sutra, the Buddha taught, "These are my sons, this is my wealth, with such thought a fool is tormented. Verily, he is not even the owner of himself. Whence sons? Whence wealth?" Dharmapada 62. He who has no thought of I and mine for whatever towards his mind and body, he does not grieve for that which he has not. He is indeed called a bhikshu, Dharmapada 367. According to the Pajalavada sect, Pajala is a Sanskrit term for personalist. A term applied to several early Indian Buddhist schools, which shared a common belief that there is a self, Pajala, which is the basis for karma and transmigration, or the substance that is the bearer of the cycle of rebirth, and that this self is neither the same nor different from the 5 aggregates. However, Buddhism denies the existence of such an eternal person or soul. Buddhism sees the person only a conventional name or a combination of physical and psychological factors that change from moment to moment. The Pajala doctrine was eventually declared heretical in Buddhism, though at one time Pajalavadins appear to have been quite numerous. If we carefully look into the Buddha's teachings, we will see that the Buddha always denies such a permanent and partless self. The teaching of Pajala caused such a violent reaction on the part of its opponents was that while the Enlightenment doctrine of the Buddha was entirely true in a conventional sense, there was still a Pajala or person. This person is an ultimately real thing, the substratum which allows for continuity between rebirths, for memory, and for the future ripening of intentional actions or karma, which are performed in the present or the past. If there was no person at all, as its opponents claimed, then Buddhism would be open to the charge of nihilism and immortality, for there would be nobody who could undertake moral actions. It insisted that the Pajala was indeterminate in relation to the skandhas, neither outside them nor within them, neither identical with them, nor different from them. In fact, this Pajala was only perceptible to the Buddhas. In support of its position, it frequently quoted sayings of the Buddha such as, "Monks, there is a single person born into the world for the welfare of many people, for the happiness of many people, out of compassion for the world, for the benefit, welfare, and happiness of gods and men." One might see this kind of position reflected in the Tathagatagarbha doctrines of the Mahayana, the Chan and Thien Thai schools in China. Thus, it is believed that this school was formed on the basis of a doctrinal division within the Theravada school in the 3rd century BC and survived until the 9th or 10th centuries AD. It originally called Vatsiputriya, after its teacher, Vatsiputra. It was later named the Samatya and gave rise to several subsects of its own. 454. Egolessness. When Sakyamuni Buddha put forth the notion of no self, he upsets many concepts about life in the universe. He blasted our most firm and widespread conviction, that of a permanent self. Those who understand not self know that its function is to overthrow self, not to replace it with a new concept of reality. The notion of not self is a method, not a goal. If it becomes a concept, it must be destroyed along with all other concepts. The doctrine of no self has two main characteristics: selflessness of things, dharma-naratmya, and selflessness of person, pujalanaratmya. Sometimes, the teaching of not self causes confusion and misunderstanding. Any time we speak, we do say "I am speaking" or "I am talking," etc. How can we deny the reality of that I? Sincere Buddhists should always remember that the Buddha never asked us to reject the use of the name or term I. The Buddha himself still used a word tathagata to refer to himself. No matter what is the meaning of the word, it is still a word or a name. When the Buddha taught about not self, he stressed on the rejection of the idea that this name or term I stands for a substantial, permanent and changeless reality. The Buddha said that the 5 aggregates, form, feeling, perception, volition and consciousness, were not the self, and that the self was not to be found in them. The Buddha's rejection of the self is a rejection of the belief in a real, independent, permanent entity that is represented by the name or term I. For such a permanent entity would have to be independent, permanent, immutable and impervious to change, but such a permanent entity and/or such a self is nowhere to be found. A Sanskrit term for no self. One of the 3 characteristics, trilaksana, that the Buddha said apply to all conditioned samskrita phenomena, the others being impermanence and unsatisfactoriness or suffering. The doctrine holds that, contrary to the assertions of the Brahmanical orthodoxy of the Buddha's time, there is no permanent, partless, substantial self or soul. The Brahmanical tradition taught that the essence of every individual is an eternal, unchanging essence, called the Atman. The Buddha declared that such an essence is merely a conceptual construct, and that every individual is in fact composed of a constantly changing collection of aggregates, skandha. No self also means non-existence of a permanent self. The body consists of the 5 elements and there is no self. Elements exist only by means of union of conditions. There is no eternal and unchangeable substance in them. 455. Afflictions are bodhi. According to the Mahayana teaching, especially the Thien Thai sect, afflictions are inseparable from Buddhahood. Affliction and Buddhahood are considered to be 2 sides of the same coin. When we realize that afflictions in themselves can have no real and independent existence, therefore, we don't want to cling to anything, at that very moment, afflictions are bodhi without any difference. Once we thoroughly understand the real meaning of afflictions are bodhi, we've already subdued our own afflictions. The Buddha witnessed that all sentient beings undergo great sufferings, so he resolved to leave the home life, to cultivate and find a way to help sentient beings escape these sufferings. Afflictions manifest themselves through our ignorance. Sometimes they show in our appearance. Sometimes they are hidden in our minds, etc. In our daily life, we cannot do without sufferings and afflictions. However, if we know how to cultivate, we always consider afflictions as bodhi. If we know how to use it, affliction is bodhi. On the contrary, if we do not know how to use it, then bodhi becomes affliction. According to late Most Venerable Xuan Huan Talks on Dharma, Volume 7, bodhi is analogous to water, an affliction to ice. Ice and water are of the same substance, there is no difference. In freezing weather, water will freeze into ice, and in hot weather, ice will melt into water. When there are afflictions, water freezes into ice, and when the afflictions are gone, ice melts into water. It is to say, having afflictions is having the affliction ice of ignorance, having no afflictions is having the body water of wisdom. 456. The doctrine of egolessness. The doctrine of egolessness is one of the central teachings of Buddhism. It says that no self exists in the sense of a permanent, eternal, integral and independent substance within an individual existent. The anatta or anatma doctrine taught by the Buddha, to which most Buddhists, including Zen practitioners, subserve, is briefly the not-self idea of man's true nature. This is not to be confused with the not-self expression used in Hindu philosophies. It means that the true nature of man is not conceivable by the human mind. How can one speak of anatta if there is no atta? We must understand what the Buddha meant by anatta. He never meant anything in contradistinction to atta. He did not place two terms in juxtaposition and say, "This is my anatta in opposition to atta." The term anatta, since the prefix an indicates non-existence and not opposition. So anatta literally means no atta, that is the mere denial of anatta, the non-existence of atta. The believers in anatta tried to keep their atta. The Buddha simply denied it by adding the prefix an. As this concept of anatta, self or soul, was deep-rooted in many whom the Buddha met, he had to discourse at length on this pivotal question of self to learned men, dialecticians and hair-splitting disputants. The doctrine of no self has two main characteristics: selflessness of things, dharma, and selflessness of person, pujalanarajna. First, selflessness of person, pujalanarajna. Man is without ego or permanent soul, or no permanent human ego or soul. Second, selflessness of things, dharmanarajna. This means no permanent individuality in or independence of things. Things are without independent individuality, i.e. the tenet that things have no independent reality, no reality in themselves. The idea that there is no self-substance or Atman constituting the individuality of each object is insisted on by the followers of Mahayana Buddhism to be their exclusive property, not shared by the Hinayana. This idea is naturally true as the idea of no self-substance or dharmanarajna is closely connected with that of sunyata, and the latter is one of the most distinguishing marks of the Mahayana. It was natural for its scholars to give the former a prominent position in their philosophy. In the Lankavatara Sutra, the Buddha taught, when a bodhisattva mahasattva recognizes that all dharmas are free from citta, manas, manavijnana, the five dharmas, and the threefold svabhava, he is said to understand well the real significance of dharmanarajna. 457. Determinism and selflessness. Determinism means the theory of being determined by fate, nature, or God. Buddhism believes in the absence of a permanent unchanging self or soul, or non-existence of a permanent self. According to the Vimalakirti Sutra, the body consists of the five elements or skandhas, which together represent body and mind, and there is no such so-called self. Elements exist only by means of union of conditions. There is no eternal and unchangeable substance in them. When these come apart, so-called body immediately disappears. Since the form which is created by the four elements is empty and without self, then the human body, created by the unification of the five skandhas, must also be empty and without self. Human body is in a transforming process from second to second. In Theravada, no self is only applied to the person. In the Mahayana, all things are regarded as without essence. According to Prof. Junjiro Takakusu in the Essentials of Buddhist Philosophy, the Buddha regarded this world as a world of hardship and taught the ways to cope with it. Then what are the reasons which make it a world of hardship? The first reason, as given by the Buddha, is that all things are selfless or egoless, which means that no things, men, animals and inanimate objects, both living and not living, have what we may call their original self or real being. Let us consider man. A man does not have a core or a soul which he can consider to be his true self. A man exists, but he cannot grasp his real being, he cannot discover his own core, because the existence of a man is nothing but an existence depending on a series of causations. Everything that exists is there because of causations, it will disappear when the effects of the causations cease. The waves on the water's surface certainly exist, but can it be said that a wave has its own self? Waves exist only while there is wind or current. Each wave has its own characteristics according to the combination of causations, the intensity of the winds and currents in their directions, etc. But when the effects of the causation cease, the waves are no more. Similarly, there cannot be a self which stands independent of causations. As long as a man is an existent depending on a series of causations, it is unreasonable for him to try to hold on to himself and to regard all things around him from the self-centered point of view. All men ought to deny their own selves and endeavor to help each other and to look for coexistence, because no man can ever be truly independent. If all things owe their existence to a series of causations, their existence is a conditional one. There is no one thing in the universe that is permanent or independent. Therefore, the Buddhist theory that selflessness is the nature of all things inevitably leads to the next theory that all things are impermanent, anicca. Men in general seem to be giving all of their energy to preserving their own existence and their possessions. But in truth it is impossible to discover the core of their own existence, nor is it possible to preserve it forever. Even for one moment nothing can stay unchanged. Not only is it insecure in relation to space, but it is also insecure in relation to time. If it were possible to discover a world which is spaceless and timeless, that would be a world of true freedom, i.e., nirvana. Men in general seem to be giving all of their energy to preserving their own existence and their possessions. But in truth it is impossible to discover the core of their own existence, nor is it possible to preserve it forever. Even for one moment nothing can stay unchanged. Not only is it insecure in relation to space, but it is also insecure in relation to time. If it were possible to discover a world which is spaceless and timeless, that would be a world of true freedom, i.e., nirvana. If, as the modern physicists assert, space is curved and time is relative, this world of space and time is our enclosed abode from which there is no escape. We are tied down in the cycles of cause and effect. If, as the modern physicists assert, space is curved and time is relative, this world of space and time is our enclosed abode from which there is no escape. We are tied down in the cycles of cause and effect. As long as men cannot discover a world which is not limited by time and space, men must be creatures of suffering. To assert that such a state, unlimited in time and space, is attainable by man, is the message of Buddhism. As long as men cannot discover a world which is not limited by time and space, men must be creatures of suffering. To assert that such a state, unlimited in time and space, is attainable by man is the message of Buddhism. Of course, there is no such thing as a limitless time. Even modern physical science does not recognize infinity in time and space. However, the Buddha brought forward his ideal, nirvana, extinction, following his theories of selflessness and impermanence. Nirvana means extinction of life and death, extinction of worldly desire, and extinction of space and time conditions. This, in the last analysis, means unfolding a world of perfect freedom. Selflessness, no substance, and impermanence, no duration, are the real state of our existence. Nirvana, negatively extinction, positively perfection, is our ideal, that is, perfect freedom, quiescence. 458. Non-dual, Dharma door. Most of us are still attached to duality and have not reconciled essence and marks, existence and non-existence, noumenon and phenomena. We embrace essence and reject marks, we embrace non-existence, emptiness, and reject existence, and so on. This kind of wrong view creates a lot of disputes, doubts and perplexity. In fact, there is mutual identity between noumenon and phenomena. Phenomena are noumenon, noumenon is phenomena. Buddhist cultivators should reconcile all things and eliminate this unnecessary attachment. Sincere cultivators should try to reconcile essence and marks, existence and non-existence, noumenon and phenomena. We embrace essence and reject marks, we embrace non-existence, emptiness, and reject existence, and so on. This kind of wrong view creates a lot of disputes, doubts, and perplexity. In fact, there is mutual identity between noumenon and phenomena. Phenomena are noumenon, noumenon is phenomena. Buddhist cultivators should reconcile all things and eliminate this attachment. The non-duality is the central Mahayana doctrine. The non-duality or non-differentiation of samsara and nirvana. According to the Heart Sutra, Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva says that form is not different from emptiness, and emptiness is not different from form. The other aggregates, too, are not different from emptiness, and emptiness is not different from the aggregates. Thus samsara and nirvana, the aggregates and emptiness, phenomena and conditioned, the conditioned and the transcendental, are all alternatives that are relative to each other. They have no independent existence. Indeed, because they are relative to each other, they are, each of them, ultimately unreal and empty. Hence the duality of samsara and nirvana is dissolved in the vision of emptiness. Emptiness is the way out of all extremes, even the extremes of samsara and nirvana. According to the Vimalakirti Sutra, Chapter 9, Initiation into the Non-Dual Dharma, Upasaka Vimalakirti discussed with other bodhisattvas about the non-dual dharma. At that time, Vimalakirti said to the bodhisattvas present, "Virtuous ones, each of you please say something about the non-dual dharma as you understand it." In the meeting, a bodhisattva called Comfort in the Dharma said, "Virtuous ones, birth and death are a duality, but nothing is created, and nothing is destroyed. Realization of this patient endurance leading to the uncreate is initiation into the non-dual dharma." The bodhisattva called Guardian of the Three Virtues said, "Subject and object are a duality, for where there is ego there is also its object, but since fundamentally there is no ego, its object does not arise. This is initiation into the non-dual dharma." The bodhisattva never winking said, "Responsiveness, Vedana, the second aggregate, and unresponsiveness are a duality. If there is no response to phenomena, the latter cannot be found anywhere, hence there is neither accepting nor rejecting of anything, and neither karmic activity nor discrimination. This is initiation into the non-dual dharma." The bodhisattva highest virtue said, "Impurity and purity are a duality. When the underlying nature of impurity is clearly perceived, even purity ceases to arise. Hence the cessation of the idea of purity is initiation into the non-dual dharma." The bodhisattva winner of samadhi by looking at the stars said, "External disturbance and inner thinking are a duality. When disturbance subsides, thinking comes to an end, and the absence of thought leads to non-dual dharma." The bodhisattva skillfully said, "Monistic form and formlessness are a duality. If monistic form is realized as, fundamentally, formless, with relinquishment of formlessness in order to achieve impartiality, this is initiation into the non-dual dharma." The bodhisattva wonderful arm said, "The bodhisattva mind and the sravaka mind are a duality. If the mind is looked into as void and illusory, there is neither bodhisattva mind nor sravaka mind. This is initiation into the non-dual dharma." The bodhisattva Pusyu said, "Good and evil are a duality. If neither good nor evil arises so that formlessness is realized to attain reality, this is initiation into the non-dual dharma." The bodhisattva Simha, lion, said, "Weal and woe are a duality. If the underlying nature of woe is understood, woe does not differ from weal. If the diamond, indestructible, wisdom is used to look into this with neither bondage nor liberation coming into play, this is initiation into the non-dual dharma." The bodhisattva lion's fearlessness said, "The mundane and supramundane are a duality. If all things are looked into impartially, neither the mundane nor the supramundane will arise, with no differentiation between form and formlessness. This is initiation into the non-dual dharma." The bodhisattva pure interpretation said, "Activity, Ju Wei, and non-activity, Wu Wei, are a duality, but if the mind is kept from all mental conditions, it will be void, like space, and pure and clean wisdom will be free from all obstructions. This is initiation into the non-dual dharma." The bodhisattva Narayana said, The mundane and the supramundane are a duality, but the underlying nature of the mundane is void, or immaterial, and is but the supramundane which can be neither entered nor left, and neither overflows, like the stream of transmigration, nor scatters, like smoke. This is initiation into the non-dual Dharma. The Bodhisattva's skillful mind said, Samsara and nirvana are a duality. If the underlying nature of samsara is perceived, there exists neither birth nor death, neither bondage nor liberation, and neither rise nor fall. Such an understanding is initiation into the non-dual Dharma. The Bodhisattva direct insight said, the exhaustible and the inexhaustible are a duality. If all things are looked into exhaustively, both the exhaustible and the inexhaustible cannot be exhausted, and the inexhaustible is identical with the void which is beyond both the exhaustible and the inexhaustible. Such an interpretation is initiation into the non-dual Dharma. The Bodhisattva upholder of universality said, the ego and non-ego are a duality. Since the ego cannot be found, where can the non-ego be found? He who perceives the real nature of the ego will not give rise to dualities. This is initiation into the non-dual Dharma. The Bodhisattva lightning perception said, enlightenment and unenlightenment are a duality, but the underlying nature of unenlightenment is enlightenment, which should also be cast away. If all relativities are discarded and replaced by non-dual impartiality, this is initiation into the non-dual Dharma. The Bodhisattva Priyadarsana said, form, rupa, and voidness are a duality, but form is identical with voidness, which does not mean that form wipes out voidness, for the underlying nature of form is void of itself. So are the other four aggregates: reception, vedana, conception, sanjna, discrimination, samskara, and consciousness, vijnana, in relation to voidness. Consciousness and voidness are a duality, yet consciousness is identical with voidness, which does not mean that consciousness wipes out voidness, for the underlying nature of voidness is void of itself. A thorough understanding of this is initiation into the non-dual Dharma. The Bodhisattva understanding the four elements said, the four elements, earth, water, fire and air, and their voidness are a duality, but the underlying nature of the four elements is identical with that of voidness. Like the past, before the four elements came into being, and the future, when they scatter away, which are both void, the present, when they appear, is also void. Identical understanding of the underlying nature of all four elements is initiation into the non-dual Dharma. The Bodhisattva deep thought said, eyes and form are a duality, but if the underlying nature of the eye is known with neither desire nor anger nor stupidity in relation to things seen, this is nirvana. Likewise, the ear and sound, the nose and smell, the tongue and taste, the body and touch, and the mind and ideation are dualities, but if the underlying nature of the mind is known with neither desire, anger and stupidity in relation to things heard, smelt, tasted, touched and thought, this is nirvana. Resting in this state of nirvana is initiation into the non-dual Dharma. The Bodhisattva inexhaustible mind said, charity perfection, dana paramita, and the dedication, parinamana, of its merits towards realizing the all-knowledge, sarvajna, are a duality, but the underlying nature of charity is dedication towards the all-knowledge. Likewise, discipline perfection, sila paramita, patience perfection, ksanti paramita, zeal perfection, virya paramita, meditation perfection, dhyana paramita, and wisdom perfection, prajna paramita, with dedication to the all-knowledge, are 5 dualities, but their underlying natures are but dedication to the all-knowledge. While realization of their oneness is initiation into the non-dual Dharma. The Bodhisattva Profound Wisdom said, voidness, formlessness and non-activity are 3 different gates to liberation, and when each is compared to the other 2 there are 3 dualities, but voidness is formless, and formlessness is non-active. For when voidness, formlessness and non-activity obtain, there is neither mind, nor intellect nor consciousness, and liberation through either one of these 3 gates is identical with liberation through all the 3. This is initiation into the non-dual Dharma. The Bodhisattva unstirred sense organ said, Buddha, Dharma and Sangha are three different treasures, and when each is compared to the other two, there are three dualities, but Buddha is identical with Dharma, and Dharma is identical with Sangha. For the three treasures are non-active, wu-wei, and are equal to space, with the same equality for all things. The realization of this equality is initiation into the non-dual Dharma. The Bodhisattva unimpeded mind said, body and its eradication in nirvana are a duality, but body is identical with nirvana. Why? Because if the underlying nature of body is perceived, no conception of existing body and its nirvanic condition will arise, for both are fundamentally non-dual, not being two different things. The absence of alarm and dread when confronting this ultimate state is initiation into the non-dual Dharma. The Bodhisattva's superior virtue said, the three karmas, produced by body, mouth and mind, are different when each is compared to the other two, and make three dualities, but their underlying nature is non-active, so non-active body is identical with non-active mouth, which is identical with non-active mind. These three karmas being non-active, all things are also non-active. Likewise, if wisdom, prajna, is also non-active, this is initiation into the non-dual Dharma. The Bodhisattva field of blessedness said, good conduct, evil conduct and motionlessness are different, and when each is compared to the other two make three dualities, but the underlying nature of all three is voidness, which is free from good, evil and motionlessness. The non-rising of these three is initiation into the non-dual Dharma. The Bodhisattva majestic blossom said, the ego and its objective are a duality, but if the underlying nature of the ego is looked into, this duality vanishes. If duality is cast away, there will be no consciousness, and freedom from consciousness is initiation into the non-dual Dharma. The Bodhisattva treasure of threefold potency said, realization implies subject and object which are a duality, but if nothing is regarded as realization, there will be neither grasping nor rejecting, and freedom from grasping and rejecting is initiation into the non-dual Dharma. The Bodhisattva moon in mid-heaven said, darkness and light are a duality. Where there is neither darkness nor light, this duality is no more. Why? Because in the state of samadhi resulting from the complete extinction of sensation and thought there is neither darkness nor light, while all things disappear. A disinterested entry into this state is initiation into the non-dual Dharma. The Bodhisattva Ratna Mudra, precious symbol, said, joy in nirvana and sadness in samsara are a duality which vanishes when there is no longer joy and sadness. Why? Because where there is bondage, there is also desire for liberation, but if fundamentally there is no bondage nor liberation, there will be neither joy nor sadness. This is initiation into the non-dual Dharma. The Bodhisattva gem on the head said, orthodoxy and heterodoxy are a duality, but he who dwells in, i.e. realizes, orthodoxy does not discriminate between orthodoxy and heterodoxy. Keeping from these two extremes is initiation into the non-dual Dharma. The Bodhisattva joy in reality said, reality and unreality are a duality, but he who realizes reality does not even perceive it, still less unreality. Why? Because reality is invisible to the ordinary eyes and appears only to the eye of wisdom. Thus, realization of the eye of wisdom, which is neither observant nor unobservant, is initiation into the non-dual Dharma. After the Bodhisattva had spoken, they asked Manjusri for his opinion on the non-dual Dharma. Manjusri said, in my opinion, when all things are no longer within the province of either word or speech, and of either indication or knowledge, and are beyond questions and answers, this is initiation into the non-dual Dharma. At that time, Manjusri asked Vimalakirti, all of us have spoken, please tell us what is the Bodhisattva's initiation into the non-dual Dharma. Vimalakirti kept silent without saying a word. At that, Manjusri exclaimed, excellent, excellent, can there be true initiation into the non-dual Dharma until words and speech are no longer written or spoken? After this initiation into the non-dual Dharma had been expounded, 5,000 bodhisattvas at the meeting were initiated into it. thereby realizing the patient endurance of the uncreate. 459. 10 kinds of non-indulgence. According to the Flower Adornment Sutra, Chapter 18, there are 10 kinds of non-indulgence. When enlightening beings persist in non-indulgence, they attain 10 kinds of purity. First, to keep the behavioral precepts. Second, to abandon folly and purify the will for enlightenment. Third, straightforwardness and reject flattery and deception. Fourth, to earnestly cultivate virtues without regressing. Fifth, to continually reflect on one's aspiration. Sixth, not to enjoy association with ordinary people, whether they be householders or monks. Seventh, to do good deeds without hoping for worldly rewards. Eighth, to forever leave lesser vehicles and practice the path of enlightening beings. Ninth, to gladly practice what is good, not letting goodness be cut off. 10th, to always examine one's own perseverance. 460. Transcendental perfection. After the Buddha's great enlightenment, he discovered that all life is linked together by causes and conditions, and he also saw all the sufferings and afflictions of the world. He saw every sentient beings, from the smallest insect to the greatest king, ran after pleasure, only to end up with sufferings and afflictions. Out of great compassion for all sentient beings, the Buddha renounced the world to become a monk to cultivate to find ways to save beings. After 6 years of ascetic practices, he finally discovered the way to cross over from this shore, which is also called paramita. According to Buddhism, paramita means to cross over from this shore of births and deaths to the other shore, or nirvana. If we try to cultivate and can see the truth clearly as the Buddha himself had seen, eventually, we would be able to end all sufferings and afflictions. According to most Mahayana sutras, the 6 things that ferry one beyond the sea of birth and death. In addition, the 6 paramitas are also the doctrine of saving all living beings. The 6 paramitas are also sometimes called the cardinal virtues of a bodhisattva. Besides, bodhisattvas use the 6 paramitas as their method of cultivation. Giving that takes stinginess across, moral precepts that takes across transgressions, patience that takes across anger and hatred, vigor that takes across laxness and laziness, meditation that takes across scatterness, and wisdom that takes across stupidity. When these 6 paramitas have been cultivated to perfection, one can become enlightened. Paramita means perfection, or crossed over, or gone to the opposite shore, reaching the other shore. The term paramita has been interpreted differently. T. Rhys Davids and William Steed give the meanings: completeness, perfection, highest state. H. Z. Warren translates it as perfection. And some other Buddhist scholars translate paramita as transcendental virtue or perfect virtue. The Sanskrit term paramita is transliterated into Chinese as po luo mi. Po luo is Chinese for pineapple, and mi means honey. In Buddhism, paramita means to arrive at the other shore, to ferry across, or save, without limit. Paramita also means perfection, or crossed over, or gone to the opposite shore, reaching the other shore. Crossing from samsara to nirvana, or crossing over from this shore of births and deaths to the other shore. Practice which leads to nirvana. Paramita also means to achieve, finish, or accomplish completely whatever we do. For instance, if we decide to cultivate to become a Buddha, then the realization of Buddhahood is paramita. The 6 practices of the bodhisattva who has attained the enlightened mind. The term paramita is popular for both Mahayana and Theravada Buddhism. According to the Sanskrit language, paramita means crossing over. There are 6 paramitas, or 6 things that ferry one beyond the sea of mortality to nirvana. 6 stages of spiritual perfection followed by the bodhisattva in his progress to Buddhahood. The 6 virtues of perfection are not only characteristic of Mahayana Buddhism in many ways, they also contain virtues commonly held up as cardinal by all religious systems. They consist of the practice and highest possible development. Thus, practicing the 6 paramitas will lead the practitioner to cross over from the shore of the unenlightened to the dock of enlightenment. In the Lankavatara Sutra, the Buddha gave 3 kinds of paramitas. First, super-worldly paramita in the highest sense for bodhisattvas. Paramitas of the Supreme Ones of Bodhisattvas, relating to the future life for all. Second, super-worldly paramita for Sravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas. Paramitas for Sravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas relating to the future life for themselves. Third, worldly paramita or paramitas for people in general relating to this world. There are also 4 kinds of paramitas: eternity, bliss, true self, purity. First, eternity paramita. Second, bliss paramita. Nirvana is the highest bliss. Third, ego paramita. The erroneous ideas of a permanent self continued in reincarnation is the sources of all illusion. But the Nirvana Sutra definitely asserts a permanent ego in the transcendental world, above the range of reincarnation, and the trend of Mahayana supports such permanence. Ego composed of the 5 skandhas and hence not a permanent entity. It is used for Atman, the self, personality. Buddhism take as a fundamental dogma, i.e. impermanence, no permanent ego, only a temporal or functional ego. The erroneous idea of a permanent self continued in reincarnation is the source of all illusion. Fourth, purity paramita. There are also 6 in 10 paramitas. According to the Sutta commentary, those who practice paramitas will escape from being born in the following inauspicious states. First, they are never born blind. Second, they are never born deaf. Third, they never become insane. Fourth, they are never slobbery or rippled. Fifth, they are never born among savages. Sixth, they are never born from the womb of a slave. Seventh, they are never born in a heretic family. Eighth, they never change their sex no matter how many births and deaths they have been through. Ninth, they are never guilty of any of the 5 grave sins, anantarika kamas. 10th, they never become a leper. 11th, they are never born as an animal. 12th, they are never born as a hungry ghost. 13th, they are never born among different classes of asuras. 14th, they are never born in the avisi. 15th, they are never born in the side hells, Lakantarika Narayas. 16th, they are never born as Amara. 17th, they are never born in the world where there is no perception. 18th, they are never born in a heatless heaven, an avatapta. 19th, they are never born in the Rupa world. 20th, they are never born in a small world. There are 6 things which enable a bodhisattva to keep perfectly the 6 paramitas. First, worshipful offerings. Second, study and practice the moral duties. The third thing which enable a bodhisattva to keep perfectly the 6 paramitas is pity. Fourth, zeal and goodness. The fifth thing which enable a bodhisattva to keep perfectly the 6 paramitas is isolation. Sixth, delight in the law. According to the Heart Sutra, when the bodhisattva Avalokitesvara was cultivating the profound prajnaparamita, he illuminated the 5 aggregates and saw that they were all empty and crossed beyond all sufferings and afflictions. Therefore, we, devout Buddhists, who resolve to practice the profound prajnaparamita, can also see that they are all empty. And we too can cross beyond all sufferings and afflictions. But devout Buddhists should always remember the requirements for cultivating profound prajnaparamita are to avoid arrogance, for being arrogant is stupid, to avoid complacency, for being complacent is stupid, to always feel shame and remorse, for not feeling shame and remorse is stupid, to avoid exploiting situations. For exploiting situations is stupid, to avoid feelings of anger and hatred, for feelings of anger and hatred are stupid. Devout Buddhists should try their best to cultivate profound prajnaparamita, to be able to illuminate and shine through the 50 states of the skandha demons in the 5 aggregates. 10 demonic states appear in each of the aggregates of form, feelings, thoughts, activities, and consciousness. 461. 3 kinds of paramita. The first paramita is the paramitas of the Supreme Ones of Bodhisattvas, relating to the future life for all. In the Lankavatara Sutra, the Buddha gave 3 kinds of paramitas. One of them is the super-worldly paramita for bodhisattvas. Super-worldly paramita requires a bodhisattva to cultivate in a long period of time with a supremely pure mind. Besides, bodhisattvas must try to transcend the virtues or qualities of the Sravakas and the Pratyeka Buddhas to lead to the highest result of benefiting others. The paramita that are super-worldly in the highest sense are practiced by a bodhisattva who understands that the world is dualistically conceived because of the discriminating mind and who is detached from erroneous imaginations and wrong attachments of all kinds, such as mind, form, characters, etc. He would practice the virtue of charity solely to benefit sentient beings and to lead them a blissful state of mind. To practice morality without forming any attachment to condition in which he binds himself, this is his sila paramita. Knowing the distinction between subject and object, and yet quietly to accept it without waking any sense of attachment or detachment, this is the bodhisattva's kshanti paramita. To exercise himself most intently throughout the day and night, to conform himself to all the requirements of discipline, and not to evoke a discriminating mind, this is his virya paramita. Not to cling to the philosopher's view of nirvana and to be free from discrimination, this is his dhyana paramita. As to prajna paramita, it is not to evoke a discriminating mind within oneself, nor to review the world with any kind of analytical understanding, not to fall into dualism, but to cause a turning at the basis of consciousness. It is not to destroy the working of a past karma, but to exert oneself in the exercise of bringing about a state of self-realization. This is prajna paramita. The second paramita is the paramitas for Sravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, relating to the future life for themselves. In the Lankavatara Sutra, the Buddha gave 3 kinds of paramitas. One of them is the super-worldly paramita for Sravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas. This is the super-worldly kind of paramitas which is practiced by Sravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas who, clinging to the idea of nirvana, are determined to attain it at all costs. They are like the worldly people who are attached to the enjoyment of egotism. The third paramita is the paramitas for people in general relating to this world. The worldly kind of paramitas is practiced by worldly people who cling to the idea of an ego and what belongs to it. They are unable to shake themselves off the fetters of dualism, such as being and non-being, and all the virtues they would practice are based on the idea of gaining something material as a reward. They may gain certain psychic powers and after death be born in the heaven of Brahma. However, paramitas are not ideal virtues, nor empty concepts, but they are logically practical principles determining the worth of cultivators' actions in daily life. This is the end of this video. As you already know, Buddha emphasized the importance of generosity supporting the spread of the Dharma for spiritual growth. We can cultivate this virtue in our digital age. Now I need your help spreading the Buddha teaching further by subscribing, liking, and sharing our channel. You're supporting the dissemination of valuable teachings, much like this Sangha was supported in the past. Your engagement accumulates positive karma for you and helps make the Dharma accessible to a wider audience, a meritorious act indeed. Let's do this with pure intentions, free from attachment and selfishness, fostering a sense of community and supporting our own spiritual journey. These principles, rooted in Buddhist ethics, continue to guide us. You will receive great blessings for supporting the propagation of Buddha's teachings in a very simple way. By subscribing, liking, and sharing to help spreading the Buddha teaching to all human beings. Wishing you and your family always have a peaceful and happy life.